We're going to have sustainably high silver prices over the sort of medium and longer term, but I think it's wise to expect some kind of a correction either.
We're here with Peter Krauth. Hi, Peter. Thanks for coming.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Peter is the author of The Great Silver Bull and the editor of The Silver Stock Investor. Tell us a little bit about your background, Peter.
So I've been in the newsletter business for almost 2 decades now. Started out actually writing resource-focused investment newsletters, and then I'm say about 2020 or so, right, sort of as COVID hit, decided I wanted to get back into the newsletter business, and teamed up with a woman actually out of Vancouver here, Gwen Preston, who had her own newsletter for several years. And a few months later launched Silver Stock Investor, and I've had that newsletter ever since 2021, early that year. So we're on 5 years already, and last year launched a second newsletter. Thank you. It's not the easiest business, and certainly strong markets will help. But if you believe in something and you're willing to have a bit of patience, it can prove itself out. And the second newsletter was launched actually a year ago, Silver Advisor. And that is a free letter for investors, and talks about, again, companies that we invest in. They're a little bit sort of, I guess you'd call less risk type companies, more advanced, but some very interesting names, and many of those have performed extremely well as also over the last year.
Maybe you could touch on that, because one of the things people back home want to know is what the recommendations are, what's good, what's not.
Right.
So if you have some that you could talk about from your newsletter by name, that would be helpful to people back home, I think.
Sure. So a couple of names in the free letter, for example, you've got companies like Avino, GR Silver. We've got companies like Sierra Madre. These are all. One of them is a near-term producer. The other two are The other two are producers. We've grown the list considerably from a year ago. We started out with one company, Cerro de Pasco. We now have some larger producers. Skeena is a near-term producer. It's going to be a very big mine here in BC. We've got Aya Gold and Silver that is producing in Morocco, one of the world's rare pure silver mines. Tremendous growth from these companies. Lots of upside is left, and it's a very narrow space. Yeah, absolutely. We can talk about that a little bit more in terms of opportunity, but there's a lot of room for these companies to move up in terms of re-rating valuation, but it's a very narrow space, and I'm happy to say these are the only two silver newsletters in the business. So yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's a huge accomplishment.
Thank you.
And you mentioned we could touch on opportunity.
Sure.
So where are you seeing the opportunity in silver stocks and silver metal as a whole?
Yeah, overall. So we've seen a tremendous run up in the silver price. So that has me sort of near-term cautious when it comes to silver. It's, I like to say, when I look back over the long-term past, silver hit $50 for the first time in 1980, and only really surpassed it in a sustainable way this past October. So it took 45 years to get back to $50, and then it took 3 months to get to $100. So this is a huge rise in the last 3 months. Frankly, I think it's a little bit rich and a little bit too quick.
Right.
I do think it's sustainable. We're going to have sustainably high silver prices over the sort of medium and longer term, but I think it's wise to expect some kind of a correction either now or near term. I don't think we're going back below 50. That would frankly shock me, but to see somewhere around $70, $80 would be very realistic, and the miners would be extremely happy at those levels.
Mm-hmm. Not too far off from now, but you're not seeing a huge drop.
Exactly. So I looked at sort of the last bull market, which was 2001 to 2011, and silver had 5 corrections of, on average, 30%. And so if we looked at that kind of a correction now, that would bring us to somewhere around $70 or $80. So I think that would be more than realistic to expect this time around.
Yeah, reasonable room to fall.
Absolutely.
And you think that correction is happening in the very near future? When you say that, like, next couple of months and
Yeah.
the
Oh,
next
yeah. I mean, I think that because of the run up that we've had, again, look, nobody
That's
knows for
interesting.
sure.
People are having a
Yeah.
hard time commenting on when they think that bubble and
Right.
timing is going to burst.
So, I mean, again, given how dramatic this rise has been, I think it would be unrealistic to expect it to continue, and I think it would be not only healthy, but I think it's actually desirable for the market as a whole to see this kind of a pullback, see the market digest the gains, and give it a chance to start either climbing once again, or at least move sideways, consolidate for a little while, and then start to move up again.
Do you have your eye on any particular silver stocks?
Yeah. So, well, I do want to talk about that a little bit. I mean, given the way the silver price has run, I think that the next opportunity in silver is going to be in the silver miners. And the reason I say that is because the valuation of the stocks has not kept pace with the rise in the silver price. So analysts are not using $100 silver to value companies, to value projects. What they're using is $25, $30, maybe $40 silver. And what they do is they look back over the past few quarters and they take an average price. Well, frankly, now that we're at $100, the average price in the last quarter of last year was $70. I doubt most of them are going to even use $70. But even if they use $50 or $60, what we're going to see is that over the next couple of quarters, when we see miners report their profits and they're actually selling the silver at $80, $90, $100, the profit margins are going to just explode higher, and everyone's going to have to reprice what these shares are worth because they're just generating so much profit. And I think after a couple of quarters and investors seeing that and realizing, oh wow, these are cash machines, they're worth a lot more than they're being priced at in the market right now. There's a lot of value and a lot of gains to be made in that market. And so I think over the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to see silver stocks do extremely well.
So now's a good opportunity, buying opportunity.
I believe so, exactly. Again, with some caution, if silver corrects significantly, I would expect the stocks also to correct. So I wouldn't be, at this point, I certainly wouldn't be going in, buying with both hands, but I would be cautious. And what I would say is both in silver and in silver stocks, if you see a meaningful pullback, I would absolutely treat that as an opportunity to buy and get a higher allocation.
Mm-hmm. Any opinions on gold?
Yeah, gold has had quite the run as well. What I notice about gold is that it's been a much steadier rise. Not that long ago we were at 4,000, but a lot of the buying has come from central banks, and they've been buying very consistently. That has made the rise in the gold price, I think, very sustainable. We've not seen meaningful big corrections in the gold price. I think that the world is waking up to concerns about geopolitics, concerns about inflation. They've seen high and sustained inflation for a long time. They don't believe it's going away. And, central banks are calling for lower rates. So the lower rates mean higher inflation. People will borrow more easily. And so higher inflation is likely to lead to even higher gold prices, and silver follows gold. And, at certain points in the cycle, silver will surpass gold, which is what we have seen happen in the last few months. Mm-hmm. Some people will say, oh, that means that the bull market is over. I don't see it that way. I think that it's sort of the early stages. And if you were to ask me, where are we in this cycle? I would say that in this silver bull that started probably about 2 years ago when it bottomed around $22, I think in February of 2024. In fact, I remember doing interviews here and I was asked about that. I said, the downside technically is so minimal. And I said, I think that the upside is there's so much higher probability. And within about 3 to 4 weeks after that, it had bottomed and it took off. I think that we've got so much potential left. Gold will stay high, and that'll support silver. I think we're about, maybe if we look back at 2022 being the bottom, I think that we're probably in this third inning or so in this silver bull. We've probably got at least 5, 6 to maybe 10 years left.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you think we got to the point where silver is now, in your opinion, going to surpass gold?
So I think for a couple of reasons. One is that the silver is a very, very particular market and commodity. It's the only one that is considered both money and an industrial metal. You can't say that, I mean, to some extent for gold, but most of gold is used for savings, not for industry because it's so expensive. And other than silver, you can't really say that it's got sort of these dual purposes. Silver is really unique that way. And what has happened is that the industrial demand side of silver has grown so much over the last 5 years or so. About 5 years ago, half of silver consumption was on the industrial side, and the other
From
half,
like the tech industry.
yeah, tech, the medical industry. You have it in water purification. You have it in cornea replacements. You have it in. It actually is in the rods for fuel rods for nuclear power plants.
Did you say cornea replacement?
Cornea replacements have silver in them.
The first we hear that today.
Yep, because it's a biocide. Silver is known as having the ability to kill bacteria for thousands of years. And so, in fact, one of the panelists this morning, Maria Smirnova of Sprott, told me actually a few years ago. She said, "Yeah, we know. We used to put silver coins in wine barrels to keep the wine fresh." There you go.
Wine.
It would keep the wine fresh. Absolutely, it would kill bacteria. So that's why you find it in bandages. You find it in creams to if someone has had burns, for example, it'll kill bacteria.
I've heard of this, yeah.
So yeah, you have it in certain clothing. It'll kill odors, for example.
That too. They've been weaving it into fabric.
That's right, exactly. So it's multi-purpose. In fact, silver has, after oil, it's the commodity that has the most varied uses worldwide. It's something like 10,000 different applications. So it's widely used.
It's a great point to make that people haven't touched on yet.
They don't realize it's widely used, and it's almost irreplaceable in most of its applications. So, even if the silver price runs up, most of the consumers industrially have no choice. They have to keep buying silver. So, to the point I was making earlier, about 5 years ago, half of the silver consumption was to industry. Now we're at something like 67% of the silver is consumed by industry. So, what that means is that the rest of what's not consumed by industry is what's available for investment.
Yeah, financial.
So guess what happens when the investment demand comes back in a big way? There's less silver available for them. So that puts severe pressure on the price. And I think that's kind of what we've seen happen in the last few months. Silver investors have come back into the market, not so much in the West, but definitely in Asia and in Europe. And that has put a lot of pressure and has really helped push the silver price up.
And the West is obviously waking up to it now.
The West is waking up to it. One of the ways that we can see that is if you look at silver ETFs. So globally, silver ETFs have really started to catch up to their previous peak of early 2021 in terms of the amount of silver that they hold. But if you look at silver ETFs just in the West, they have a long ways to go still to catch up. So it tells you that individual silver investors really haven't come to this party yet, and there's a lot of room still for that. And that's why I think that silver prices at maybe not $100, for the next month or a couple of months, but on balance, we're going to stay and surpass 100 and continue higher, because really the vast majority of people have no clue really even what's happening yet, and are slowly waking up to it, and they're going to start putting pressure. Absolutely.
Yeah, wow. Very insightful.
For the viewers at home, is there anything that you would like to leave them with?
Yeah, I would say that it's not too late to get informed. I mean, you might think, wow, silver's at $100. 3 months ago was at $50. I'm not saying, again, jump in with both feet, but start to get informed, look at this market. I certainly believe that it's got a long way to go. People have asked me, how did you know that silver was cheap at $20? And I tell them, well, that was easy because nobody wanted to talk to me. Now everybody wants to talk to me. We're at triple digits. I think that, hopefully, if I have a clue about what I'm saying, I do believe that it's heading higher, and the opportunity is still there. The opportunity now, I think, has kind of shifted more favorably towards the miners, and you don't have to take big risks. I've looked at how the miners have performed in the past, and in that 2001 to 2011 bull market. two of the biggest silver miners did a 16 times return. So these were some of the lowest risk companies, and you could make huge returns over a matter of a few years. So I think we're going to start to see that happen again. And despite the fact that they have really moved up a lot over the last sort of year or year and a half, they're nowhere near where they're going to go.
Thank you so much, Peter. We've absolutely loved having you here. For the viewers at home, where can they find out more information about you, somewhere they can follow you online?
Sure. So I'm pretty active on X. You can find me there. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn. Other than that, there's the book, The Great Silver Bull, which is essentially an introduction to silver. So it tells you all about the history of silver, why it's important, how it's used, how you can invest in it, and ultimately, when eventually in several years we reach a peak, like in all bull markets, how and when you'd want to actually sell your silver investments. And then there's
right now.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the two newsletters, Silver Stock Investor and Silver Advisor. So, lots of great research there, ideas about how to get invested, different companies that you might find interesting, covers the whole gamut from the highest, the largest cap miners to the lowest cap explorers, lowest risk to highest risk. And, people should invest with whatever they're comfortable in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
It's been a
Peter.
pleasure.
It was great to meet you.